Welcome to Sleepy Trivia, the podcast where we explore the fascinating world of history, one intriguing fact at a time. Tonight, we journey through epic battles and military strategies that shaped our world, from ancient clashes to modern warfare. Imagine the clash of steel, the thunder of hooves, and the roar of cannons as we delve into the Trojan War, a conflict shrouded in myth and legend, yet supported by intriguing archaeological evidence. Marvel at Alexander the Great's undefeated military genius, conquering vast territories from Persia to Egypt. Picture Hannibal crossing the Alps with war elephants, a daring feat during the Punic Wars against Rome. Visualize Julius Caesar's legions conquering Gaul, expanding the Roman Republic's reach. Then, fast forward to the Battle of Hastings, where Norman knights changed the course of English history forever. We'll explore the religious fervor of the Crusades, the vast Mongol Empire sweeping across Asia, and the 100 Years' War with the legendary Joan of Arc. The invention of gunpowder revolutionized medieval warfare, setting the stage for the Spanish Armada's clash with England and Napoleon's epic campaigns across Europe, culminating in the decisive Battle of Waterloo. But history isn't just about ancient times. We'll uncover the American Revolutionary War's fight for independence, the tragic American Civil War, and the Franco-Prussian War that unified Germany. Then, the 20th century brought unprecedented global conflict. World War I, with its trench warfare and new weapons. The rise of the Blitzkrieg in World War II, the attack on Pearl Harbor, the D-Day landings, and the dawn of the atomic age with the Manhattan Project. From the Cold War's proxy conflicts, like the Korean and Vietnam Wars, the Cuban Missile Crisis's nuclear brinkmanship, to the Gulf War's technological advancements, and the War on Terror, we'll explore it all. So, get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the stories of history lull you to sleep. The Trojan War, described in Homer's Iliad, is one of the most famous conflicts in ancient history. While its historicity is debated, archaeological evidence suggests a major battle may have occurred near the site of Troy around the 12th century BCE. The Peloponnesian War was a 27-year conflict between Athens and Sparta in ancient Greece. This war marked the rise of Sparta as the dominant power in Greece and the eventual decline of Athens. Alexander the Great never lost a single battle during his military campaigns. His strategic genius allowed him to conquer vast territories, including Persia, Egypt, and parts of India, before his death at the age of 32. The Punic Wars were a series of 3 conflicts between Rome and Carthage that lasted over a century. Hannibal, a Carthaginian general, famously crossed the Alps with war elephants to invade Roman territory during the Second Punic War. Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul, described in his own writings, solidified his reputation as a military leader. This campaign expanded the Roman Republic's territory into what is now modern France and Belgium. The Battle of Hastings in 1066 changed the course of English history. William the Conqueror's Norman forces defeated King Harold II, establishing Norman rule in England. The Crusades were a series of religious wars fought between the 11th and 13th centuries. Their primary goal was to reclaim Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control, though their effects extended across Europe and the Middle East. The Mongol Empire, led by Genghis Khan and his successors, created the largest contiguous land empire in history. Their innovative military tactics, including the use of composite bows and psychological warfare, allowed them to conquer vast territories. The 100 Years' War was a prolonged conflict between England and France from 1337 to 1453. Joan of Arc became a national heroine of France for her role in leading French forces to victory in several key battles. The invention of gunpowder revolutionized warfare in the medieval period. Originating in China, it spread to the Middle East and Europe, leading to the development of firearms and cannons that reshaped battlefields. The War of Jenkins, Ear, 1739-1748, began after a British captain claimed his ear was cut off by Spanish sailors. Though the cause was minor, it became part of larger global conflicts between Britain and Spain. The punitive expedition of 1916 was a U.S. military campaign into Mexico to capture Pancho Villa after he attacked a town in New Mexico. It marked one of the last major cavalry operations in American history. The Siege of Masada, c. 73-74 CE, was a dramatic event during the First Jewish-Roman War. Jewish rebels held out against Roman forces atop a desert fortress before ultimately taking their own lives to avoid capture. The Anglo-Dutch Wars, 1652-1674, were a series of naval conflicts over control of trade routes. These wars established Britain as a dominant naval power in the late 17th century. The Philippine-American War in 1899-1902 was a brutal conflict following the Spanish-American War. Filipino revolutionaries fought against U.S. annexation, leading to significant casualties on both sides. The Battle of Saratoga, 1777, was a turning point in the American Revolutionary War. The American victory convinced France to enter the war as an ally, providing critical military support against Britain. The War of the Austrian Succession, c. 1740-1748, was triggered by a dispute over Maria Theresa's right to inherit the Habsburg throne. It involved nearly all major European powers and set the stage for later conflicts. The Ethiopian-Addle War, 1529-1543, saw the Christian Ethiopian Empire fend off a Muslim Addle Sultanate supported by the Ottoman Empire. Portuguese allies played a key role in Ethiopia's victory. The Spanish Armada was a massive fleet sent by Spain in 1588 to invade England. Despite its size, the Armada was defeated by a combination of English naval tactics, bad weather, and logistical issues. Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power during the French Revolution and became one of history's greatest military leaders. His campaigns across Europe reshaped borders and introduced modern military strategies. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 marked the end of Napoleon's rule. After his defeat by a coalition of European powers, led by Britain and Prussia, he was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena. The American Revolutionary War, fought from 1775 to 1783, led to the independence of the 13 American colonies from British rule. The war was notable for guerrilla tactics and the influence of the French military. The Civil War in the United States from 1861 to 1865 was fought over states, rights, and slavery. It was one of the first modern wars, featuring trench warfare, ironclad ships, and widespread use of railroads. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870-1871 resulted in the unification of Germany under Prussian leadership. This conflict dramatically shifted the balance of power in Europe and set the stage for World War I. World War I, also known as the Great War, was fought from 1914 to 1918 and introduced industrialized warfare. It saw the use of machine guns, tanks, and chemical weapons on a scale never before seen. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in 1914 is often cited as the spark that ignited World War I. This event triggered a series of alliances that brought major powers into conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1910, officially ended World War I. Its harsh terms imposed on Germany, including reparations and territorial losses, contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and World War II. World War II, fought from 1939 to 1945, was the deadliest conflict in human history. It involved over 70 countries and resulted in an estimated 50 to 70 million deaths. The Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, was a military tactic used by Germany during World War II. It emphasized rapid movement, surprise attacks, and close coordination between tanks, infantry, and air support. This strategy led to early German successes in Europe. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States into World War II. Japan's surprise assault damaged or sank numerous U.S. Navy ships, but critical aircraft carriers were not in port and survived the attack. The Normandy landings, also known as D-Day, took place on June 6, 1944. This Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France was the largest amphibious assault in history and marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. The Manhattan Project was a top-secret U.S. program during World War II that developed the first nuclear weapons. The project culminated in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender. The Korean War, fought from 1950 to 1953, was the first major conflict of the Cold War. It ended in a stalemate, with the Korean Peninsula remaining divided at the 38th parallel, a situation that persists to this day. The Vietnam War lasted from 1955 to 1975 and was one of the most controversial conflicts in modern history. Guerrilla warfare and the use of chemical agents like Agent Orange defined the conflict, which resulted in a North Vietnamese victory. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. It began when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, leading to a tense 13-day standoff with the United States before the missiles were withdrawn. The Falklands War in 1982 was a conflict between the United Kingdom and Argentina over the Falkland Islands. The war lasted just 10 weeks and ended with a British victory, reaffirming control over the islands. The Gulf War in 1991, also known as Operation Desert Storm, was a U.S.-led coalition effort to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi occupation. Advanced technology like precision, guided bombs, and stealth aircraft played a key role in the conflict. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the United States led to the War on Terror. This included the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 to dismantle the Taliban regime and al-Qaeda, and the Iraq War in 2003, aimed at removing Saddam Hussein from power. The Battle of Stalingrad during World War II is often considered one of the turning points of the war, lasting from 1942 to 1943. It ended with a decisive Soviet victory and marked the beginning of Germany's retreat on the Eastern Front. The Trojan Horse, as described in mythology, was a deceptive strategy used by the Greeks to enter the city of Troy. While the story may be fictional, it has become a symbol of cunning and subterfuge in warfare. The Battle of Thermopylae in 480 CE is famous for the stand of 300 Spartans and their allies against the massive Persian army. Though the Spartans were defeated, their bravery became legendary in Greek history. The Opium Wars in the 19th century were conflicts between China and Western powers over trade, particularly the British importation of opium. These wars weakened China's Qing dynasty and led to significant territorial concessions to foreign powers. The Siege of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of the Byzantine Empire. The Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Mehmed II, used massive cannons to breach the city's walls, changing the balance of power in the region. The Battle of Midway in 1942 was a critical naval battle during World War II. The United States decisively defeated Japan, sinking 4 aircraft carriers and shifting the momentum in the Pacific theater. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905 was the first time an Asian power defeated a European nation in modern warfare. Japan's victory over Russia demonstrated its growing military strength and reshaped global perceptions of power. The Battle of Agincourt in 1415 during the 100 Years' War is famous for the English longbow. Outnumbered English forces, led by King Henry V, defeated the French thanks to superior tactics and the devastating power of their archers. The Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939 was a precursor to World War II. It pitted the Republicans against the Nationalists, with Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini supporting the Nationalists and the Soviet Union backing the Republicans. The Battle of the Bulge in late 1944 was Germany's last major offensive during World War II. It was a surprise attack in the Ardennes region, but Allied forces eventually repelled the Germans, hastening the end of the war in Europe. The Zulu Wars of the 19th century saw the British Empire clash with the Zulu Kingdom in South Africa. The Zulu army, despite being outgunned, achieved notable victories, including the Battle of Asondawana in 1879. The 30 Years' War, a 16-in-8, 6048, was one of the most destructive conflicts in European history. Originally a religious war between Catholics and Protestants, it evolved into a political struggle involving most major European powers. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 established British naval dominance for over a century. Admiral Horatio Nelson led the British fleet to victory against the combined French and Spanish navies, but was fatally wounded during the battle. The Persian Wars in ancient Greece included famous battles like Marathon, Salamis, and Plataea. These conflicts between Greek city-states and the Persian Empire shaped the course of Western civilization. Wussy. The Indian Rebellion of 1857, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny, was a major uprising against British rule in India. While ultimately unsuccessful, it marked the beginning of organized resistance to colonialism in the region. The Tet Offensive during the Vietnam War in 1968 was a massive coordinated attack by North Vietnamese forces. Although it was a military failure, it shifted public opinion in the United States against the war. The Meiji Restoration in Japan, 1868, ended centuries of samurai rule under the Tokugawa shogunate. The new government rapidly modernized its military, transforming Japan into a major world power within decades. The First Crusade s. 1096-1099 ended with the capture of Jerusalem by European forces. This marked the height of the Crusader movement, though subsequent crusades failed to achieve similar success. The War of the Roses, 1455 and 1487, was a series of civil wars in England between the rival houses of Lancaster and York. The conflict ended with the rise of the Tudor dynasty, uniting the two factions. The Franco-American alliance during the American Revolutionary War was instrumental to the colonists' victory. French military aid, including troops and a naval blockade at Yorktown, forced the British to surrender in 1781. The fall of Saigon in 1975 marked the end of the Vietnam War. North Vietnamese forces captured the city, leading to the reunification of Vietnam under communist rule. The Battle of Verdun, 1916, was one of the longest and bloodiest battles of World War I, fought between France and Germany. It became a symbol of French resilience, despite massive casualties on both sides. The Soviet-Afghan War, 1979-1989, was a key Cold War conflict. Soviet forces fought against Afghan resistance groups, or Mujahideen, who were supported by the United States. The war drained Soviet resources and contributed to the USSR's collapse. The Boer Wars, 1880, 881, and 1899, 902, were fought between the British Empire and the Boers, descendants of Dutch settlers in South Africa. The British used concentration camps and scorched earth tactics, leading to widespread suffering among civilians. The Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE was one of the greatest tactical victories in history. Hannibal's Carthaginian forces encircled and annihilated a much larger Roman army, cementing his reputation as a brilliant general. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 led to the overthrow of the Shah and the establishment of an Islamic republic. This event drastically changed the geopolitics of the Middle East and relations with Western nations. The Peloponnesian War, 431–404 BCE, devastated ancient Greece. The prolonged conflict weakened the Greek city-states, paving the way for the rise of Macedon under Philip II and Alexander the Great. The Gulf War, 1990–1991, was one of the first conflicts to be widely televised. Images of precision bombings and ground operations were broadcast worldwide, showcasing the modern technology of the US-led coalition. The Siege of Leningrad during World War II lasted over 900 days, from 1941 to 1944. It resulted in immense suffering, with over 1 million deaths due to starvation, disease, and bombardment. The Haitian Revolution, 1791–1804, was the only successful slave revolt in history to result in an independent nation, led by figures like Toussaint Louverture. Haiti became the first free black republic in the Western Hemisphere. The Suez Crisis in 1956 was a pivotal moment in the decolonization of the Middle East. Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, leading to a brief conflict with Britain, France, and Israel. The crisis signaled a decline in European imperial power. The 30 Years' War, 1648, devastated much of Europe, particularly the Holy Roman Empire. The conflict ended with the Treaty of Westphalia, which established the principles of state sovereignty and non-interference in domestic affairs. The Cold War, as 1947–1991, was characterized by proxy wars, nuclear arms races, and ideological clashes between the United States and the Soviet Union. Although it never escalated into a direct conflict, it defined global politics for decades. The Battle of Okinawa, 1945, was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific during World War II. The fierce fighting resulted in significant casualties on both sides, marking a turning point as the Allies prepared for an invasion of Japan. The Russo-Turkish Wars were a series of conflicts between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire over control of territories in Eastern Europe and the Black Sea region. These wars contributed to the eventual decline of the Ottoman Empire. The Indian independence movement led to the partition of British India in 1947, creating the nations of India and Pakistan. The partition was accompanied by mass migrations and widespread violence, reshaping the South Asian political landscape. The Spanish-American War, 1898, marked the emergence of the United States as a global power. The conflict resulted in the U.S. gaining territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, signaling the start of American imperialism. The Boxer Rebellion is 1899-1901 was a nationalist uprising in China against foreign influence and Christian missionaries. It was suppressed by an international coalition, further weakening the Qing dynasty. The Arab-Israeli War of 1948, also known as the War of Independence, began after the establishment of Israel. The conflict resulted in a decisive Israeli victory and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. The Yom Kippur War of 1973 was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria against Israel on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. While initially successful, the war ended with an Israeli counteroffensive and eventual ceasefire. The 100 Years' War, A. 1337-1453, saw the emergence of gunpowder weaponry in European battlefields. Cannons and early firearms began to change the nature of siege, warfare, and combat. The Assyrian Empire, 200,500, 679 BCE, was one of the first to develop professional standing armies. Their advanced siege tactics and use of iron weapons made them a dominant force in the ancient Near East. This completes 100 entries on the history of warfare. Let me know if you'd like to explore a different theme or topic. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 marked the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan. This decisive battle brought over 200 years of relative peace to the country under Tokugawa rule. The Gallipoli campaign during World War I was a failed Allied attempt to open a new front against the Ottoman Empire. The campaign is remembered for its heavy casualties and as a pivotal moment in the national histories of Australia and New Zealand. The Boer guerrilla tactics during the Second Boer War, 1899-1902, forced the British to adopt counter-guerrilla measures. These included the use of blockhouses and scorched earth policies, which caused significant civilian suffering. The Crimean War, 1853-1856, is notable for introducing modern, wartime medical practices, thanks to figures like Florence Nightingale. Her work laid the foundation for professional nursing and improved sanitation in battlefield hospitals. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 divided the world between Spain and Portugal. This agreement aimed to prevent conflict over newly discovered lands, but also highlighted the role of colonial competition in shaping global conflicts. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 was a naval engagement between the Holy League and the Ottoman Empire. It marked the last major battle, fought almost entirely with rowed galleys, signaling the transition to sailing ships in naval warfare. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 was a turning point in the struggle between the Ottoman Empire and European powers. The city's defense, aided by Polish King Jan Sobieski, ended Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Italian Wars, 1494-1559, involved a series of conflicts over control of the Italian peninsula. These wars introduced the widespread use of artillery and the transition from medieval to early modern warfare. The partition of Poland in the late 18th century erased Poland from the map for over a century. This division between Russia, Prussia, and Austria highlighted the power struggles among European empires. The Anglo-Zulu War in 1879 featured the famous Battle of Rorke's Drift, where a small British force successfully defended against a much larger Zulu army. The battle became a symbol of bravery and determination. The First Sino-Japanese War, 1894-1895, marked the emergence of Japan as a modern military power. The conflict ended in a decisive Japanese victory and signaled the decline of the Qing dynasty in China. The Treaty of Ghent in 1814 ended the War of 1812 between the United States and Britain. Although no territorial changes occurred, the war solidified American national identity and weakened Native American resistance. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE decided the fate of the Roman Republic. Octavian's victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra paved the way for his reign as Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The Spanish Reconquista was a centuries-long effort to reclaim Iberian territories from Muslim rule. It culminated in 1492 with the fall of Granada, coinciding with the funding of Columbus's voyage to the Americas. The Battle of Gettysburg, 1863, was a turning point in the American Civil War. The Union's victory halted Confederate General Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North and set the stage for their eventual triumph. The Russo-Japanese War, 1904-1905, ended with the Treaty of Portsmouth, brokered by U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. This marked the first time an Asian nation defeated a European power in a major war. The Mexican-American War, 1846-1848, resulted in the U.S. acquiring vast territories, including modern-day California, Arizona, and Texas. This expansion reshaped the continent, but intensified debates over slavery. The Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE is one of the earliest recorded battles in history, fought between the Egyptians and Hittites. It led to the first known peace treaty, highlighting early diplomatic efforts in warfare. The Spanish Civil War, 1936-1939, was a testing ground for new military technologies. Germany and Italy used the conflict to test aircraft, tanks, and strategies that they later employed during World War II. The First Balkan War, 1912-1913, saw a coalition of Balkan states defeat the Ottoman Empire, reclaiming significant territories. However, disagreements over the spoils of victory led directly to the Second Balkan War. The Normandy landings during World War II, codenamed Operation Overlord, involved forces from the US, Britain, Canada, and other allies. It marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The Arab Spring in the early 2010s triggered widespread protests and uprisings across the Middle East. While some movements succeeded in overthrowing regimes, others led to prolonged conflict, such as in Syria. The Great Northern War, 1700-1721, ended Swedish dominance in Northern Europe. Russia emerged as a major power under Peter the Great, shifting the balance of power in the region. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850-1864, in China, was one of the deadliest conflicts in history, resulting in over 20 million deaths. It was a civil war between the Qing dynasty and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, a radical Christian movement. The Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE ended the Greco-Persian Wars. The Greek city-states united to defeat the Persian army, securing the independence of Greece for centuries.